So to be honest with you, I thought that Nike's 2021 lineup as a whole was kind of boring compared to the rest of the competition, and they just only had a couple of really interesting models. Fortunately, in 2022, that is gonna change, and I'm really excited what they have in store for us. They have the Pegasus 39, a 5K, 10K racing flat, a mind-blowing redesign of the ZoomFly, the Alphafly 2, and they're reviving the Peg Turbo. So I have a lot to report on today, so let's go ahead and dive in. So let's go ahead and start with the Pegasus 39. The new upper on the shoe kind of reminds me of the Vomero 15 upper with flywire, a plastic midfoot cage, and engineered mesh. The midsole still uses full React, but it gets some tweaks to the geometry, and instead of just the forefoot air zoom unit, it will now have a heel air zoom unit to make the landing just a little bit softer. The outsole is very similar to the previous versions, but now there's just some extra added flex grooves. So I'm excited for some of these tweaks. I wasn't the biggest fan of the Pegasus 37, mainly due to the fit, and I just felt like I had to really break in that React foam, so I'm excited to see some tweaks in the 39. So I believe it's going to still cost $120 and will be released around that typical May to June timeframe. So this will be my third video talking about this shoe. I think I made my first one like a year and a half ago, but in 2022 we are finally going to see the release of the ZoomX StreakFly. This is going to be Nike's modern take of the 5K, 10K racing flat, and we've seen it on the feet of a ton of athletes, a ton of leaks, but let's look at the official images. The upper is very thin and seems kind of track spike inspired. It uses a thin mesh that seems to be very similar to what you see on the Dragonfly. The midsole is full ZoomX with an embedded TPU midfoot shank for some added stability, which some of the previous Streak LT models had as well. But Nike distinctly labeled this midsole as TPE ZoomX, which makes me wonder if we'll be seeing a variation of ZoomX that is a little cheaper and a little firmer, since this shoe doesn't have a forefoot plate. Speaking of the plate, a lot of people assumed that it'd have a carbon plate or a full plate of some kind, but it will not. The rubber on the outsole reminds me of the Alphafly, and it seems like it should have decent grip, and there's just a couple tiny strips of rubber on the heel. So this shoe is going to be super lightweight and come in at 5.6 ounces. I'm not quite sure what size that's in, but I've heard it might even be under 5, so I guess we'll have to wait and see. The price is going to be $160, and it comes out in the fall of 2022, I believe. Alright, this next shoe I'm really excited about. So I actually also made a video on this shoe a little while back, but back then I thought it was the Pegasus Pro. Well, it turns out that shoe that was going around the web was actually a fake pre-production model of the ZoomFly 5. So this shoe gets a huge redesign, and let's go ahead and see what it looks like. So it has a thin open mesh that's very breathable, and it has a midfoot band to help improve that lockdown. It also has a lightly padded tongue and ankle collar. For the midsole, it has somewhat of a bucket seat design where the sidewalls wrap up around the foot to help make it a little more stable. As for the midsole material, it uses a recycled ZoomX core, like the same material we see in the Alphafly Nature, with an SR2 carrier, which I think is just EVA, but I'm not 100% sure. So like ZoomFlies of the past, this shoe still has a full carbon fiber plate, and Nike is claiming that this shoe will give you that 4% efficiency, just like the Nike Vaporfly 4%. The outsole has thin web rubber for decent durability and grip on the forefoot and in the heel. So with all the big changes in this shoe and the addition of ZoomX, it isn't getting a price increase. It's still going to stay at $160, which I honestly was kind of shocked about, but I'm very happy about because I think that's going to be a great deal. And this shoe, I think we'll expect it in fall of 2022, kind of around August-September time frame. Next up is another very exciting shoe, the Alphafly Next% 2. So I do have some official drawings from Nike that demonstrate the new colorways this shoe is going to come in. They look very cool, but it doesn't look too dissimilar from a lot of the Alphafly Next% 2 prototypes that we've been seeing lately on the feet of Kipchoge and some of the other Nike athletes. So I love the first Alphafly for marathon racing, and I'm excited to see it get some tweaks for the second version. So we've seen prototypes with the StreakFly upper, the Vaporfly Next% 2 upper, and there's been some more promising options that seem pretty similar to the current Atom Knit upper, with maybe some fly knit around the heel. Anyways, it looks like the final version that will be released will be Atom Knit with just a few tweaks compared to last year's version. As for the midsole, there now seems to be a slight bucket seat design as well, and this will help add some stability in the heel. Nike added some ZoomX under the AirPods to make the midfoot landing a bit softer, and now it seems like the midsole has some notches in the ZoomX, similar to like we see on the ZoomX Invincible, to maybe help it be a little more softer where they want it to be, and it looks like there are larger cutouts to expose more of the plate. The outsole gets tweaked as well. It may be potentially thinner rubber, I'm not sure, but one thing that we can see is that it adds cutouts. I'm not sure if this is to maybe add some flexibility or try and save some weight. Speaking of weight, this image shows it coming in at 8.1 ounces. Again, I'm not sure what size that's in. On Nike's website for the current Alphafly weighs 7.4 ounces in a men's 8.5. So I hope that this is just a size discrepancy, because that'd be kind of a big weight gain for the shoe. This shoe will still cost the same $275, and I believe we should be expecting it to be released in time for those fall marathons of 2022. And lastly, we have a very exciting shoe that I almost did not believe at first until multiple sources confirmed it for me. That is the revival of the Pegasus Turbo. So I'm definitely a huge fan of the Pegasus Turbo. I still have my first pair with over 500 miles on it, and me and many other people have been begging Nike to bring this shoe back, and I guess they listened. So it's different from the original version, but I'm going to be very curious to see how it compares. Anyways, let's take a look at it. So this is technically the Pegasus Turbo Flyknit Next Nature. So the upper uses recycled yarn Flyknit material, with some nods to the original Peg Turbo with the racing stripe on the forefoot. The sock liner is made out of recycled ZoomX scraps, which I'm pretty sure they've used in some of their other models before as well. The midsole is interesting. It has a thin SR2 EVA carrier with the ZoomX core that's made out of the recycled ZoomX scraps, same as what we'll have in the Zoomfly 5 and what's used for all of the Alphafly Nature. It supposedly feels a bit more cushioned underfoot than the original Peg Turbo as well. The outsole has a waffle-inspired tread made from recycled rubber, and it kind of reminds me of a modern update to the Peg 31 outsole in the forefoot. It has a wider platform than the original Pegasus Turbo throughout, and even wider than the Peg 38 and Peg 39, but it's especially noticeable in the midfoot and the heel. So this is really going to help with making the ride much more stable. It won't have that taper with the really skinny midsole, which is something I complained about with the original Pegasus Turbo. So it seems to have good coverage in the forefoot and in the heel from what I've seen, and it does have the midfoot being exposed with that SR2 foam. So I don't have a confirmed price of this shoe, but considering that the Alphafly Nature was quite a bit more expensive than the regular Alphafly Next%, I think it's $25 more. I'm hoping we don't see the shoe cost around $200, but I guess we'll have to wait and see on that. I would, even if it's still the original $180, I might say that's okay just because they are bringing back the Peg Turbo. I don't have a super specific release for the shoe. I've just heard that it's in the second half of 2022. So there you have it. There are a lot of super exciting stuff coming up from Nike in 2022. There are two shoes you might be wondering about though, and that is the Vaporfly Next% 3 and the Nike Tempo Next Percent 2. As for the Vaporfly Next Percent 3, they just came out with the Next Percent 2 this year, so they typically skip a year, but I've heard some squeaks that they might be discontinuing it. I don't know if I actually believe that, but I guess we'll see. My assumption is that we'll see a big redesign of it in 2023. And as far as the Tempo Next Percent, I'm quite certain that that shoe is discontinued, especially now with the ZoomFly getting ZoomX in it and that new redesign. I know some people will be disappointed and miss those Air Zoom pods, but I honestly think that the ZoomFly 5 is looking like a really good deal. So I am super excited for all these shoes coming out next year. I think the ZoomFly 5 and the Peg Turbo Nature are going to be the two that are at the top of my list. Go ahead and let me know down below in the comments which models you're most excited for. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of my reviews of these upcoming shoes. And as always, keep on running.